So I've got with me on set here, France 24's Andrew Hilliar. Andrew, I just want to come off the back of what Seema was saying about the Pope being such a liberal, progressive Pope, which actually brought him to clashes quite often with hardline conservatives and even the Trump administration in the United States.
That's absolutely right, Jeannie. Pope Francis was considered a progressive Pope, and for that reason he attracted the ire of the Catholic right and also the ire of several cardinals, supposedly his closest collaborators. Even back in 2017 he spoke out against what he called traitors, unnamed traitors, accusing them of holding back his institutional reform of the Catholic Church. And he also alienated a lot of Christian conservatives with his criticism of things like capitalism, climate change, his open arms policy to migrants and to homosexuals. And of course, the Pope never really made any secret of his disagreement with the Trump administration when it came to the treatment of migrants. It's really no surprise he has clashed repeatedly in the past with Trump as well. As Seema just mentioned there, his very first visit outside of Rome in 2013 to the Italian island of Lampedusa to meet with newly arrived migrants. He also, throughout his time as a pope, denounced what he called the globalization of indifference shown to would-be refugees. In 2016, he prayed for dead migrants at the US-Mexico border. And of course, no one can forget when he brought 12 Syrian refugees back to Rome on his plane after visiting a refugee camp in Lesbos. So these pleas for an open, welcome policy for migrants has often put him at odds with European and with, of course, US governments, in particular the Trump administration. Back in February of this year, he actually sent a letter to US Catholic bishops, a rare rebuke in which he said governments should not turn a blind eye to men, women, and families that need help. So the tensions, between Pope Francis and the Trump administration have always been very latent, right back from 2016 at the time of the first Trump administration. He actually asked Trump to take a more welcoming attitude to migrants. And even before Trump's first administration, Pope Francis said anyone who builds a wall to keep out migrants was not a Christian. And the irony of this is that J.D. Vance's meeting with the Pope yesterday was in many ways an attempt to mend those ties.
It certainly was. J.D. Vance, who is Catholic. There was a post from the White House earlier on X where Donald Trump said rest in peace to Pope Francis, showing a picture of himself with the Pope as well as J.D. Vance with the Pope, who, as you said, Andy, just met with Pope Francis yesterday. Now, J.D. Vance also has commented on the Pope's death, saying his heart goes out to Christians around the world. That's one of many comments that have come from world leaders. The EU President Ursula von der Leyen said the Pope inspired millions far beyond the Catholic Church with his humility and love so pure for the less fortunate. Here's more now from the French President Emmanuel Macron.
During his time as Pope, he stood by the most vulnerable, the most fragile, with great humility and a very special sense of the other and of the most fragile. In these times of war and brutality, he was faithful to a tradition that was dear to him. It was the vocation of a man, a bishop, then a cardinal, and a pope, who throughout his life fought for greater justice, who fought for certain ideas of humanity, that is to say, an idea of brotherhood that I believe many people identify with.
French President Emmanuel Macron there speaking about the Pope's death. Macron there in Mayotte, where he is visiting that French overseas territory at the moment. Andy, what other kinds of reactions have there been from people around the world?
Yeah, well, a lot of reaction coming in from world leaders around the world. Of course, we just heard there from Emmanuel Macron expressing his most sincere condolences to Catholics the world over. After the death of Pope Francis, who he said had stood for a brotherly humankind. We also, as you mentioned there, J.D. Vance as well, saying that he'd learned of the passing of Pope Francis. He said his heart went out to the millions of Christians all over the world who loved him. Of course, J.D. Vance meeting with the Pope just yesterday. We've also had a lot of reaction from European leaders to Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez hailing Pope Francis' commitment to what he called the most vulnerable. Germany's Friedrich Merz saying that Pope Francis was guided by humility and faith. Also, interestingly, some reaction from Iran as well. Now, Iran, a Muslim majority country, has always maintained close ties with the Vatican. An Iranian foreign ministry spokesperson offering Iran's condolences to all Christians around the world. Also, reaction from Israel, the Israeli President Isaac Herzog saying earlier today that Pope Francis was a man of deep faith, peace, and compassion who fostered ties with the Jewish world.
Andy, talk us through some of the key highlights in the Pope's life. I mean, there's a lot about him that might be surprising for people to think that he actually ended up making it as Pope.
Yes, I mean, his papacy was a papacy of many firsts. He was born in 1936 in Buenos Aires. He became the first Jesuit to lead the world's 1.4 billion Catholics, the first Pope from the Americas to lead the world's 1.4 billion Catholics. He also became the first Pope to visit Iraq, meeting Iraq's top Shia Muslim cleric in 2021. And I think the contrast with his predecessor, Benedict the 16th, could not be sharper. Benedict, of course, who became the first Pope, the first pontiff to step down since the Middle Ages, Jeannie. Now, Pope Francis elected Pope on March 13th, 2013. He sought to forge, as we all know, a more open, compassionate vision of the Catholic Church. And he, for many, charmed the world with his humble style, as many would describe it. Before being elected Pope as Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he rode the bus. He denied himself luxuries. He cooked meals for impoverished people. He regularly visited the slums of Buenos Aires. And the reason he took the name Pope, the name Francis, was he wanted to take the name of a 13th century saint known for his simplicity. So a man who really wanted to define the legacy of his papacy with this image of the Catholic Church as an open and compassionate and humble institution.
Absolutely.